Today we'll take a look at the super sneaky Space Marines. Let's see what the Sons of Korax can do in 9th edition. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today on the channel we're talking about Raven Guard. I've been looking forward to talking about the Sons of Korax again for a while, so in this video we'll talk about the chapter in general, the core rules for the army, any unique special rules from their codex, some strong options including Kayvan Shrike, and finish up with an army list idea. Plenty to talk about, so let's jump straight into it. So in the background, the Raven Guard are the 19th Legion, the Sons of Korax, and come from the homeworld of Deliverance. Compared with the other Space Marine legions and chapters, the Raven Guard always preferred stealth, guerrilla tactics, and maybe using a bit more intelligence to win battles rather than raw might, often specialising in lightning raids at points of enemies' weakness, cutting supply lines, and destroying things that lose the war as a whole. They've always had a particular affinity for jump packs, particularly twin Lightning Claw Vanguard veterans, and make great use of scouts and Phobos armoured units to sight out the enemy army, and better guide the blade of their assault force right to the heart of the enemy. Currently in 9th edition, Space Marines are of course one of the stronger armies, though their superiority is most certainly being challenged by some of the new codexes. I would say that Raven Guard are perhaps around mid-tier for Space Marine codexes right now. I wouldn't say they're one of the top tier strongest like Dark Angels, but I wouldn't say they're one of the weaker ones right now, such as Imperial Fists or Death Watch. I think Raven Guard are fairly well balanced, they have a lot of strength and powerful combos, and a lot of that strength lies in trickery and outmaneuvering the opponent rather than raw damage dealing. For the core rules for their army, their chapter tactic Shadow Masters will give every unit that's greater than 18 inches away from the opponent light cover, and also if that unit happens to be an infantry unit and already inside a terrain piece, they also get the benefit of dense cover on top of that. Generally as a chapter tactic, this encourages long range firepower for the Raven Guard, both in terms of vehicles who will get a 2+ armor save against most enemy shooting, but particularly infantry units such as Devastators who are happy to hang back and also get that very nice -1 to hit. Just in general though, this will often make the army tougher. Any long-range enemy fire support won't be quite as effective against normal, even against your units in the midfield, though I would bear in mind that the only durability boost is against ranged units. More melee-focused armies just really aren't going to care about this. As with the rest of the chapters, the Raven Guard also have their own unique combat doctrine. This one's a unique tactical doctrine, and it gives you +1 to hit and wound against enemy characters. Again, this one isn't enormously general purpose, but just occasionally against some armies it can be very powerful indeed. Obviously it is pretty good with dealing with enemy HQs, whether you're sniping them or attacking them in melee, but I'd say it's perhaps at its most useful whenever you're fighting against something that has big character units as the main threats in the army. Say maybe Chaos Demons with a bunch of Greater Demons around, Imperial Knights, most of which have the character upgrade, or even things like Imperial Guard tank commanders. Games Workshop do seem to be pushing their larger-than-life centerpiece models, and with units like the Silent King and Mortarion being quite common in lists, then having the +1 to hit and wound is quite nice. That being said, it's not an absolute essential. I think that Raven Guard are potentially one of the better chapters to use as allies, as an alternative to just using them as your entire force. Other than their core rules, in their codex supplements they get plenty of warlord traits, relics, powers and stratagems, and here are just a small selection of some of them, the ones that I perhaps think are some of the strongest. Perhaps my single favourite warlord trait for them is Master of Ambush. That's the one that gives them the forward deployment. After you know who's going first, you can redeploy your warlord and one other unit, and this can potentially give you a massive alpha strike, say with putting a big unit of aggressors or something right on the front line, and dealing some mass damage with a first turn charge on the enemy. It can just be handy for a bit of redeployment within your own lines as well. The other one that I quite like is Swift and Deadly. This is an aura that gives nearby units advance and charge. Pretty nice if you've got a jump pack or bike character hurtling along alongside some Vanguard veterans or something. I feel the Raven Guard relics perhaps aren't as strong as some of the other chapters, but there are a few interesting options. They've got a relic sniper rifle in Ex Tenebris, which you can give to one of the Phobos characters, or potentially even an Eliminator Sergeant. It's pretty strong at sniping, with Assault 3, 36-inch range, Strength 4, AP -2 and Damage 2. It also allows you to ignore cover and grants you +1 to hit as well. Really potent in combination with the +1 to wound that you'll get in the Raven Guard tactical doctrine. Otherwise, the Ebon Claws are an interesting choice. AP -3, Damage D3 Lightning Claws, a very fun and fluffy choice, and the Corvidari Bolts give you a +6-inch range and ignores line of sight on your shot. Again, that could be a potentially interesting option for an Eliminator Sergeant. For their psychic powers, again I don't think that they're some of the strongest compared with some other chapters. but there are still some interesting options. Shadow Step's quite a fun one. It basically allows you to redeploy a nearby character, so it could potentially deep strike them all the way across the board and threaten something that should have been safe. And Enveloping Darkness is quite a nice debuff. It means that the unit can't overwatch, and they also get -1 to hit. Really though, I think where the strength of the Codex lies is in their stratagems. Several of the Raven Guard stratagems are just crazily strong, and perhaps two of the most interesting are Infiltrators and Strike from the Shadows. Infiltrators is your pre-game move stratagem, one command point to allow one of your units to move pre-game, and it can be really quite nice on something like a big unit of Vanguard veterans, all armed with Storm Shields and Lightning Claws. Jump them forward 12 inches into the midfield, and if you're going first, then you get a very nice easy first turn charge. There's a bit of a theme with Raven Guard, and they're very good at alpha striking the enemy. Even if you're going second though, this could give you some all-important redeployment options, maybe keeping them safe from harm, or maybe just getting into the midfield to attempt a charge after the opponent has moved forward. The other absolute game-changing one is the Strike from the Shadows rule. That one's one command point, and it allows you to put any infantry unit in Deep Strike Reserve. I'd say that this is perhaps one of the strongest options that the Raven Guard can bring to bear. It's really nice because you basically get to overcome the slow movement of certain Space Marine units and have them pop up right next to the enemy and guarantee a serious amount of damage or even an early charge before your enemy gets to deal with them. The thing is, infantry units include things like Centurions or Aggressors, relatively slow moving units that have massive close range damage output, and both of these can be a great choice for dumping in strategic reserve and unleashing a crazy amount of damage on the enemy. They have plenty of other nice options though, including Strike from the Skies. That's a 1 command point 1 to allow jump back infantry to advance and charge, and gives them an additional +1 to charge as well. There's also Raven's Blade, where you can reroll all failed charges against one unit, and False Flight, which is a nice general one to allow you to fall back and shoot and charge. That one again could be really potent on something like Aggressors or Assault Centurions. It means they're going to have absolute freedom to cause carnage if your opponent doesn't destroy them. Finally, as well as making for good allies, I think that Raven Guard are one of the strongest chapters to use successor chapters with. I used to run Raven Guard successors occasionally in 8th edition, in particular combining that excellent Strike from the Shadows special rule, with getting +1 to charge for Hungry for Battle, and also exploding 6s in melee with Whirlwind of Rage. Between the two of those, you've got just an enormously damaging close combat threat army, and anything that's coming out of Deep Strike Reserve is odds on to make their charge if you can spare a command reroll as well. If we move into the strongest units for Raven Guard, I thought it would be worth starting with talking about Kayvan Shrike himself, who is none other than the chapter master of the Raven Guard. Kayvan will cost you 135 points, and is basically a much boosted jump pack captain with twin lightning claws. His stat line's pretty impressive. He's got a whopping movement of 14 inches, so crazily fast, hits on 2s, and has 6 wounds, 6 attacks, a 3+ save, and a 4+ invul. He's equipped with the Raven's Talons, which are a very nice melee weapon. His strength 4, AP -3, and damage 2, and as with lightning claws you can re-roll the wound roll. His relic pistol, Blackout, is 18-inch range, 2 shots, strength 4, AP -2, and damage 2, and it's basically like a pistol sniper weapon, so you can ignore Lookout Sir, and any wound rolls of 6 will cause a mortal wound. Just in general, he's a very strong buffing character. His chapter master rerolls will really soup up one melee unit. He'd certainly pair well with that big unit of Vanguard veterans that we were talking about, but he also has his reroll 1's aura as well for any other units nearby. Finally, he does have a couple more special rules. His diving charge will give you the chance to score a mortal wound on the enemy. He can reroll charges both with himself and any jump pack or Phobos units within 6 inches. He can be set up in Deep Strike Reserve, and if he happens to be your Warlord, his Shadow Master rule will mean that you can't fire Overwatch at him. Just in general, I think that he's a fairly solid all-round character. It's hard to go too far wrong with him. Great movement, decent buffs, fairly strong melee, and another couple of fun special rules on top. Otherwise, I think that these are some of the stronger units for Raven Guard, and ones that might get played in a fair few lists. As I've already said multiple times already, I think that Vanguard veterans are perhaps one of the strongest choices of the army, and quite fitting as well, given their affinity for lightning claws. They're excellent users of the pre-game move that they can get, and can also get several ways to advance and charge as well, either with the stratagem or with the Warlord trait Swift and Deadly. Utterly brutal, and it's pretty handy that they're one of the stronger units in the Space Marine decks right now. Otherwise, I think that Eliminators are particularly handy to have about. They're Phobos units that fit the theme pretty well, and they make some pretty solid use of the unique doctrine. Getting +1 to wound with those strength 5 sniper rifles is guaranteed to ruin some character's day. I think Assault Centurions are also worth it a mention as well with that Deep Strike special rule. In general, they will outperform Terminators and Aggressors just in terms of raw damage output, and being able to automatically get them in very, very close is a surefire way to cut through the enemy. They can get crazy amounts of anti-horde damage between Hurricane Bolters and Flamers, and a big unit with those Siege Drills will delete almost any hard target in the game. Otherwise, I think that Eradicators can be pretty handy, both with the pre-game move and deep striking to get in range. Blade Guard Veterans could be excellent users of the Master of Ambush Warlord trait, really good units for a first turn charge, and what's more, they can really take a punch with those Storm Shields. Kayvar Shrike himself is always worth a look, and I quite like both Devastators and Aggressors. Devastators for long range decent firepower that synergize really well with the chapter tactic, and Aggressors as another option either for deep strike or for starting up front with Master of Ambush. To fill out the battle line, they do work pretty well with standard troops as well. It certainly won't hurt Intercessors or Phobos units to get -1 to hit in terrain. Finally, I thought we'd just round up by talking about a Raven Guard list. This is one that I featured earlier on the channel, and it's made by Marius Ryback, who got second place at the Hobart GT. This list does make some very good use of the Raven Guard successor chapters. It's a single battalion with the Hungry for Battle and Whirlwind of Rage traits, and is mainly set up to deliver some very scary deep striking assault centurions. It's led by a trio of characters, a chaplain on bike who takes the Litany of Faith and Mantra of Strength, and is a bit of a beatstick with the Benediction of Fury. He's a Master of Sanctity, and he takes the Master of the Trifold Path stratagem to allow him to take 2 Warlord traits, Swift and Deadly, and the Wiserator one to allow him to cast litanies more securely. There is also a Primaris Librarian here, though he is taking book powers, not the unique Raven Guard ones. He is here for Veil of Time for some faster movement, and also Null Zone, which could allow some Centurions or Aggressors to completely ignore invul saves. He takes that Master of Ambush Warlord trait, the one that allows him to start a unit up close and personal, and he also has the Armor Indomitus just to help him stay a bit safer. Finally, there's a Chief Apothecary with Selfless Healer, certainly a good combination either with Assault Centurions or with Aggressors. The list is almost entirely infantry based aside from that. To score objectives, there are a trio of troops, 1 unit of 5 Incursors, 1 unit of 5 Intercessors with auto bolt rifles, and 1 unit of Tactical Marines with bolters. They'll be good for scoring midfield and home objectives. And then we come on to the main damage dealers of the list, 3 units of Assault Centurions and 1 unit of Aggressors. The Assault Centurions all take Assault Launchers and Flamers, and 1 each takes Melter Guns, and they'll basically be the deep strike threat, popping up out of nowhere, burning a bunch of the enemy to death with a massive 10d6 flamer hits, and then getting stuck in with those siege drills which should comfortably delete almost any vehicle. They are all just a little bit swingy as to whether or not they make their charges, but odds are if you can budget a command reroll for a couple of them, then hopefully 2 out of 3 should make it. Then we come on to the Aggressors, a unit with Flamestorm gauntlets, can start up very close with Master of Ambush, and potentially even combine that with a pre-game move to get even closer. Again, they're a unit that doesn't really matter too much what they're facing. They're going to burn something to death with loads and loads of flamer hits, and then bury a hard target with a bunch of power-fisted attacks with exploding 6s. Finally, to round up, there's a few fast-moving threats, 1 unit of 6 Vanguard veterans with Lightning Claws and Storm Shields. They could potentially pre-game move or just bound up with their good movement, and then 2 single units of attack bikes with multi-melters. They could be a good choice for getting in table quarters or jumping onto objectives, as well as delivering some fairly efficient anti-tank firepower. Overall, looks like a really good fun list to play. A heavy Alpha Strike backed up by an even heavier Beta Strike, a few fast movers, and then some decent troops for scoring objectives. I think perhaps they might struggle somewhat against anything that they can't reach and is well screened. Maybe playing against an army that had a bunch of people starting in the midfield, as well as enough units to cover most of the backfield and screen out the enemy, could mean that there might be very limited opportunity for those Assault Centurions or Aggressors to get in position. Still though, the list has certainly had some good success, and proves that the Raven Guard can still be a decent threat in 9th. So I hope you've enjoyed a bit of a rundown of Raven Guard in 9th. As always, if I've missed anything, or you think there's any other things that could be really helpful for them, let me know down in the comments. So anyway, hope you've enjoyed the video. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to see more like this, and let me know which chapters I should cover next. I might do the next one on Blood Angels maybe. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention the channel's Patreon page, which does make this all possible. There's a link to it down in the video description if you'd like to help support. Any donations are enormously appreciated. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, such as seeing certain new videos early each week, regular votes to see what sort of things happen next on the channel, and automatic entry to the monthly prize giveaways with a chance to win some really big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support, then the link is down in the video description below. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.